Cam, the Save the Farms group, led by Remuera property developer John McKerney, wants public support to convince the government to stop the sales until the country has had a robust public debate. How does this debate avoid getting hijacked by your favourite friend, Winston Peters?
Well, Winston will hijack anything. When you're the height of a parking meter, you have to. But the simple fact of Save Our Farms, whose farms are they saving? The people who want to sell them want to sell them. There's no saving involved. And the only thing that they can be talking about in Save Our Farms are those that are in land court. They're not up for sale as far as I'm concerned, so I'm a little confused as to what they're trying to achieve.
So you don't see any national sovereignty issue here with selling large parts of our productive land, the golden goose, so to speak. You're happy to sell the golden goose off.
If it's okay for New Zealand companies to go overseas and invest in other countries, in their land, in their companies,
which we can't do in China.
Which we can't do in China, sure, but that's an individual case. But we can.
Well, that's the one we're talking about.
Fonterra buys up farms in Chile.
Yep.
Right? That's okay. But when it's in reverse, all of a sudden we want to put walls up. That's not how trade works. As soon as you start putting walls up, and basically this is straight racism.
But
if we had a German farm corporation,
it's an issue of ownership.
if we had a German,
that's a very good point. It's not trade we're talking about. It's ownership. They would own the land.
So what?
Well, that's completely different. That's not trade. That's ownership. That's buying up large tracts of our productive land.
Quite clearly, so what?
It's not our land.
Is what it is.
It's
I think
not
it has
our
to be,
land. It's the land of the farmer. Are they not allowed to realise their capital
away
gains?
The Chinese kind of brand off that and look at a significant.
So you would say no to Germans?
I think we take the racial elements
out of it. What about Israel?
And you look at what's a significant economic powerhouse that moves in, and it's driving in a wedge strategy here.
And that's the point there, and I agree with you on the wedge, and Fonterra's scared of the wedge. It's Fonterra that's scared, not sovereignty.
From New Zealand's point of view, who is export-led economy can ultimately suffer from this particular thing. Yeah, it's driving a wedge, driving insignificance into the Fonterra brand.
A legislative
now, what
monopoly.
effect that has on New Zealand as far as its currency in the long term is what's really
But when you're facing a single card market, like marketing arrangement like Fonterra has, what other options do you have?
Well, that's what we're talking about.
Fonterra.
What other options can be developed?
But how do you combat?
It's really difficult when you've got a national party in government that's taking $200,000 bungs to make sure.
No, but how do you combat?
That's a good point.
If you want to compete on the world stage with Fonterra, how do you compete with them when they've got a locked up market? The only way to compete with them is to pick off their land. It's the only way.
I think it's a little bit presumptuous of us in New Zealand to think that Fonterra is the monopoly provider of the world.
No, they're the monopoly provider of dairy products from New Zealand. It's hardly competitive in New Zealand.
There's good reasons why the Chinese will be driving that wedge into New Zealand, and I think New Zealand needs to actually look at the long-term consequences.
So when New Zealand is the new Cold Front war between China and America and their struggle to be the only superpower, as China attempts to gain more influence here, how does America respond? Will we see a symbolic ship visit allowed to pacify America?
Well, yeah, who knows with this lot. But the fact of the matter is they're talking about two different things here. Our relationship with China is at this stage trade and economics kind of relationships. Free trade obviously has been on the books and has been advanced. The relationship with the United States isn't quite there yet in that context, but it's certainly there in the strategic security relationship. Now, the two don't actually clash if you look at it from that point of view, but what the United States is clearly interested in and obviously sensitive to is the advance of China into the Pacific as a region. New Zealand's the latest. New Zealand is the latest on that agenda, and this is in time.
And we only have ourselves to blame for that.
And it's always an economic relationship that develops. And what I would say with the deal that's coming through here from this buy-up of the Craffer Farm type idea is that China once again is kind of saying, well, through its public relations kind of spin, that it is going to aid employment for New Zealanders. But we know from the Pacific experience that China has a policy of placing its own nationals into those those.
So is America getting nervous?
Well, just on that ships issue, last year we had 5 Chinese ships in Auckland Harbour. That's right. So we've covered the ships issue. It'd be only fair to have the Americans have a ship here, wouldn't it? Is America nervous? America, I don't think, has any idea as to what's happening in the Pacific. I frankly don't think they care outside of Pearl Harbor. And
Well, that's not quite right, because if you look at the American fleet at the moment, it used to have 2/3 in the Atlantic and Indian Ocean,
They've moved it
and
to
1/3 in the Pacific.
Yeah.
It's reversed it
Yeah.
around.
Of course,
also
because
the
they're using their
Americans
fleet
have been doing the rounds,
support
even of all
Afghanistan.
media, that it believes is significant in the sense of making sure their Deputy Assistant Secretary of State has actually had face-to-face kind of meetings where they canvas the issues.
And we've had a lot of American intelligence people here.
We certainly
Yep.
have.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
it's big. Every Pacific Forum, you see a State Department representative of usually the highest level, either the second in charge.
And
below
that's
Hillary
that's
Simpson
all
or
very nice and
Clinton or
subtle, but
next.
the Chinese don't do subtle. I mean,
No,
they-
that's right, that's right,
They
that's
do
right,
blunt
that's right.
instruments, and their blunt instrument is, do you want a nice big fat check?
Yeah.
And most Pacific countries, Fiji is a prime example, we've shunned them, we've put up all the barriers, and then along comes China with a big fat checkbook, and are we surprised that Frank Bainimarama has taken the check?
Who wins, who loses by stopping the Chinese from buying farmland in New Zealand?
Well, I think it needs to be thought through further. I think, you know, New Zealand does have to protect its brands. It does have to protect its most valuable commodity, and that is its agricultural products.
In order to
Who
do
wins,
that,
who loses? Who wins, who loses?
Winston always will win, because he'll play the xenophobic the xenophobic card here, the racism card. Who loses? Well, who's losing by a Save Our Farms campaign are the rights of the private property people who want to sell their farms and retire.
Towards private property rights.
Absolutely.
Thank you, panel. Coming up, guess who's back? Back again. Heather Roy is back. Did anyone tell the member for Epsom? Citizen A is back after the break. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Citizen A. We're reviewing the week with bloggers Selwyn Manning and Cameron Slater. Issue 3 this week, the ACT Party implosion is a gift that just keeps giving. After the farcical drama that has unfolded so far, we started this week with the SIS investigating Heather Roy's Rasputin, with the head of the SIS, John Key, saying he knows nothing. Rodney Hyde then declared that Heather Roy will find it very hard to come back. The very next day, Heather Roy came back. What on earth is happening over at ACT? Cam, Rodney almost cooked his hand with the employment lawyers by almost writing Heather Roy off, and now he looks like a weak leader. He had no idea that she'd be flanked by Roger Douglas this week either, did she?
Well, flanked or duct taped, I'm seeing Weekend at Bernie's kind of thing here with Roger Douglas. But the point is, I think Rodney is actually showing his I'm not going to use that word. Magnanimous.
That's a big word to give to Rodney.
You can't even say it. It should be banned from the English. You can't say it. Rodney's being magnanimous towards Heather, offering her a way back without Simon Ewan Jarvie.
He was attacking her the day before, and then it's like, oh, she's suddenly back in the house.
No, he's attacking the fact that she had allowed herself to be captured by a staffer.
Oh,
and that's essentially what we're talking about here. The staff is gone.
He looks
Heather can
weak.
come back.
He looks weak. He looks like he's cocked it up. He doesn't know
Well,
what the bloody
maybe he needs
hell
to get back
is
in the
going
gym.
on in his own party. Does he?
Does
he?
No, I don't believe so. I think he's
you
well in control of his own party.
Have you joined up for ACT membership now? You've left the National Party?
I am shunning all membership of all parties.
I see. Selwyn, when Heather was asked if she thought Rodney was a bully in relation to the notes leaked to the media, she said, "There's nothing in the document that I understand to be untrue." What does that mean?
Well, it obviously means he was a bully. In her view, her opinion, you know, Rodney was being a bully. Yeah. I mean, what do you expect when you go into politics in the first place anyway? But the other thing is, Rodney putting out the olive branch now is saying to the public, see, I'm not a bully.
I care.
You know, I care. I'm actually quite a meaning and caring kind of guy.
Yeah.
But the big issue here, I think, is something you touched on when you're going into this bit of a talk, that, you know, the staffer apparently didn't have security clearance.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. That is extraordinary.
This is within ministerial services.
This is within defence.
This is, you know, right in there relating to defence and strategy, and the guy doesn't have security clearance. I know when I worked as a press secretary down in the Alliance Labor government in the beginning of the 2000s, I had to have security clearance right down to whether or not I wobbled when I'd had a few drinks.
My understanding of that is that you have to consent to them doing this, and he never filled in the consent, hardly attended the office. But so you have to look at the follow-up processes within
exactly.
ministerial services. Say, why is this not done? We need to get it done.
But also, what it says to me, and what it suggests to me, is there isn't the checks going on that you would expect from the Chief of Staff and the National Party-led cabinet, but also from the point of view of this minor party that seems to not actually have its idea and its eye on process.
Well, we talked about that before the program, about the depth of political skill within minor parties.
The question to both of you, has the situation gotten so bad to demand the spin services of John Back strategist and chum to Beijing, Bill Ralston? What would the great Bill advise?
Great Bill would advise, first of all, what his bank account number is, and secondly, he'd come up with a strategy that would probably assist. It couldn't hurt. Certainly there's no strategy there at the moment.
What would the great Bill advise?
Well, probably everything Cam said, but the real problem here is in how are they going to spin themselves out of this. Yeah. Really, the whole idea here is how you're going to swindle the voting public into believing that all is sweet, not only in the ACT Party, but the most significant attachment to the national
14 months is a long time in politics.
Cam, who's going to win, who's going to lose by Heather Roy coming back to Parliament?
Well, Heather Roy will find that being a backbench MP with one staff is a whole lot different from being a minister with 10. She was low profile before, when she was a minister with all those staff. She'll be even lower profile. It's news today, it's fish and chip wrappers tomorrow for Heather Roy.
Selwyn, who's going to win, who's going to lose with Heather Roy back in Parliament?
I think we all do, looking at this. The fact of the matter is that she's fast turning into the Ms. Kopu of the ACT Party.
Let's wrap the show with last word. Mr. Manning, your last word this week is?
Just noting that the electoral roll has closed for local government elections right around the country.
Votes later.
But people talking to people they know, that doesn't mean they can still actually get their bid in to be a voter. And that's really important they do so really quickly.
Final word, Mr. Slater.
Final word is on the farming issue. I think that we need to get serious. The issue is not the fact that we've got people wanting to invest in farms in New Zealand. There should be no surprise over that. It's a quality product. The issue we have goes right back to our failure to address compulsory savings in New Zealand and our love affair for leaky, drafty residential homes.
Thank you, Mr. Manning, Mr. Slater. Ladies and gentlemen, to my final word. As a former Board of Trustees member of Youthline, I'm passionate about the issue of our shocking suicide statistics and welcome John Key's acknowledgement of this invisible social crisis. We spend millions on the road toll and give police vast draconian powers to enforce their personal prejudice to forcibly take blood samples, all in the name of public safety. Yet our suicide rate is several hundred deaths higher than the road toll and receives a fraction of the resource. Where I part company with the Prime Minister's words is at his government's actions, where the families of suicide victims now get no money for funerals from ACC because Nick Smith doesn't define suicide as an accident. This offensive semantic mirrors Nick Smith's attempt to deny rape victims funding for counselling by defining rape as an acute event rather than a mental illness. If John Key is real about taking our suicide epidemic seriously, he should start with his grossly offensive policy first. On next week's Citizen A, Deputy Mayor of Waitakere City, Penny Hulse, is on the show, and in a bit of a coup, we'll have the number 7 on ACT Party's list, the man who this week announced he will be running against Rodney Hyde for Epsom, Peter Tashkoff, on the show, that is, if he isn't assassinated before then. If you like tonight's show, please check out our Facebook site. Thanks for watching whānau. Good night, Aotearoa.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.